and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Jae-in in Seoul. Let's get started with a look at today's highlights. Korea's rapid household debt growth slowed slightly in the first quarter, but nearly half of the fresh borrowing came from non-financial institutions. With President Moon Jae-in's lineup for his economic team now almost complete, we take a look at where the new government's economic policies might be headed. We begin with Korea's stock market. The benchmark Kospi went up to as high as 2326.31 today, recording its highest intraday high since May 10th, when it recorded 2323.22, thanks to gains at top market cap, Samsung Electronics, and other heavyweights. Korean shares had been rising to record high levels recently amid growing optimism over President Moon Jae-in's plans to boost the local economy. The Kospi closed at its highest level on Tuesday, climbing 0.33% to end at 2,311.74, while the tech-heavy Kosdaq also rose 0.33% to close at 644.73. Meanwhile, the Korean won ended at 1,124.21 against the greenback. The household debt balance in the first quarter hit a record high again, and though the growth was noticeably trimmed from the previous quarter, many say it's still too early to relax. Our Eunice Kim explains.
Korean households collectively shouldered 17 trillion won more debt in the first 3 months of this year. That's about $15 billion more in household credit, which includes loans and debt incurred on credit cards. Compared to past terms, the quarter-on-quarter growth was noticeably less, coming in at just 1.3% more, which nevertheless bumped up the overall credit balance to a fresh record high of an estimated 1.36 quadrillion won, or about $1.2 trillion US dollars. Economists point to seasonal factors for the fall in quarterly growth, noting people typically move less in the first few months, and they also have year-end bonuses to rely on. Observing first quarter numbers only, the 17 trillion won figure is in fact the second highest rise on the books. Less than 5 trillion won was the average increase between 2010 and 2014, before Korea's household debt pile began rising in earnest. Also important to note is that the increases are observed in money borrowed not from banks, but from non-bank financial institutions like so-called savings banks and credit unions that carry higher interest rates. In fact, loans from such entities made up 43% of the fresh credit, and among mortgages, the increase was double what it was a year earlier. Analysts note the borrowing from periphery non-bank financial institutions has registered no slowdown on the back of a low interest rate environment and property market deregulation. Eunice Kim, Business Daily.
Oil prices are expected to rise moderately in the mid to long term following consecutive cuts by oil-producing countries. This comes on the back of Saudi Arabia and Russia agreeing on the 15th to extend an oil cut agreement reached by OPEC and non-OPEC producers last year. According to Korea Center for International Finance, major investment banks are predicting WTI, which was just under $50 per barrel, to rise to nearly $55 in the third quarter and go even higher in the fourth quarter. OPEC's end-of-year cuts were the first since the 2008 Great Recession, and although they did cause WTI prices to surge 21% to the $57 mark, they subsequently slid back to around $45. Markets will be waiting for an official announcement from major oil producers on Thursday after OPEC members hold a meeting to discuss output levels. The Moon Jae-in administration's economic master plan seems to be taking shape as President Moon recently tapped his top policymakers who will help put into motion his so-called J-nomics. Take a look.
Aju University President Kim Dong-yeon has been tapped as Korea's next Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister. Having spent more than a decade at the nation's budget office, Kim believes fiscal policy should play a more active role in reviving the economy. Korea University professor Chang Ha-sung has been appointed the Chief of Staff for Policy. He's a renowned left-wing scholar known for challenging the conventional corporate structure in Korea. Hansung University professor Kim Sang-jo has been nominated as head of the Fair Trade Commission. He's led campaigns for minority shareholders' rights in the past with Chang Ha-sung. Seogang University professor Kim Kwang-do has been named vice chair of the Presidential Economic Advisory Committee. He was ousted President Park Geun-hye's former advisor to economic policies, but later joined President Moon during his campaign to help draft his economic pledges, known as J-nomics. So, with the new economic team mostly in place, what kind of policies will they draw up to realize income-led growth driven by small businesses rather than Korea's family-run conglomerates, chaebols?
And to tell us more about this, Professor Yang Jun-suk from the Catholic University of Korea joins us in the studio today. So good to see you.
Happy to be here.
So many are saying that President Moon's picks were rather surprising as they covered the spectrum across this conservatives and liberals. But how well do you think his new policymakers reflect Moon's desire to realize this income-led growth?
Well, I think those choices he made were very interesting. And I think it reflects the popular prejudice that perhaps the progressives are better at welfare policies and income redistribution policies, while the conservatives are perhaps better at making long-term economic growth policies. So he has picked people from all of those areas. I don't think they agree completely with the positions that President Moon put out during his campaign, but widely, roughly, they don't disagree with him too much either. So those are very interesting picks, and we'll have to see how they work out when they try to implement President Moon's ideas.
Then what can we expect from Kim Dong-myung, president of Aju University, who's been tapped as the country's finance minister as well as the deputy prime minister?
Okay, well, the deputy prime minister for economics is the person who's supposed to be in charge of all economic actual policy implementation, and he's an interesting pick as well. Because he worked for conservative administrations and liberal administrations, and perhaps most tellingly, he worked on Dongmyung's long-term plan for Korean economy, so-called Vision 2030. So he's, I think, people on both the right and the left are very comfortable with him. He's known to be somewhat fair, bureaucratic, but I think he's there to perhaps calm the market and to give sort of a realistic background on policies, reform policies that the President Moon wants to carry out.
Now, and then we have Chang Ha-sung and Kim Sang-jo. Now, these two professors are longtime activists, and they're very well known to be anti-chaebols. So, with that in mind, how do you think they will go about in reforming chaebols?
Okay. Out of all these interesting choices, I think the choice of Chang Ha-sung as the chief of staff for policy in the Blue House is perhaps the most interesting. Both of these choices, well, they're known as chaebol reformists, but during the campaign, President Moon, as well as all the other candidates, advocated corporate governance reform for chaebols. And these two people are very famous for trying to get the corporate governance reforms. Kim Sang-do for the Fair Trade Administration, he's known for to try to get better corporate governance for Samsung. Chang Ha-sung is known as a creator of Corporate Governance Fund, where he used financial power to buy stocks and make the corporate governance in the companies that he takes over better. So those are very interesting choices. They fulfill at least part of the promise that President Moon made about chaebol reform. But during the campaign, President Moon gave sort of indication that he favors direct controls over the chaebol as well, in addition to corporate reform. So he would limit the areas where chaebols can go in, limit the industries, or limit the entry into so-called neighborhood markets where small businesses are run. And both of these people are generally known as activists for corporate governance, but not necessarily for direct chaebol control. They would much rather, I think, have very good corporate reform and then set up a a very competitive economy using competition policy, antitrust policy, and then let the chaebols compete in the market. If they do well, they would get bigger. If they don't do well, some of their subsidiaries may go out of business, but have more market-oriented reforms than the President Moon's campaign promises make it seem. So it'll be very interesting on whether President Moon will trust these two people to run corporate chaebol reforms, or whether he will sort of override them to place more direct controls.
Now, another interesting pick was Professor Kim Kwang-do, who served as an economic advisor to the ousted President Park Geun-hye. So, I mean, what can we make out of this nomination?
Okay, well, Kim Kwang-do sort of distanced himself from the Park Geun-hye administration around 2015, but still, I think he's the sort of the conservative in the picture here. He's known as somebody who advocates regulatory reform and higher productivity for Korea. And I think virtually all economists agree that that's what Korea needs in the long run. And he's being placed in the Council of Advisors rather than in the government itself. So he's there to perhaps provide long-term vision, as well as perhaps rein President Moon or some of the reformists if he thinks that perhaps the emphasis is going to be too much on welfare or employment rather than long-term growth. So this pick sort of reflects President Moon's stated desire that he wants to have a balanced approach between employment, fairness, and economic growth.
Now, there's this debate over increased taxes, which is still ongoing. So where do you see this issue headed with Moon's new economic control tower?
Okay, it's interesting. All the people that we mentioned so far, they opened themselves up to possibility of increasing taxes, but not yet. So they've been hinting that we'll first go on without any tax increases, but if we need to increase taxes later on, then they leave the possibility open for higher corporate tax or higher tax on the rich. Now, one of the easiest way to try to get more fair income distribution is through progressive taxes. So there's probably going to be some tax increase during the President Moon's term.
Okay.
But right now, I think the economy is still thought to be too weak. Our projected growth rate is 2.7%, even though that's a bit higher than what we expected at the end of last year. It's still one of the lowest growth rates that we've ever had. So I think they would much rather not have a tax increase until the economy recovers and gets a more growth momentum. But I think, especially if President Moon wants to make all his campaign promises into policy, actual implementation, then I think it's very difficult to avoid higher taxes. So we'll actually have to see the first regular budget that President Moon submits to see whether he would need to increase taxes or not. Now, there's also talk about supplementary budget this year of about 10 trillion won.
Right.
I think the people that we mentioned, as well as a lot of analysts, think that because the government is getting more tax receipts than they'd expected, they can finance this particular supplementary budget without raising taxes or increasing the deficit. So we'll have to wait until the regular budget is submitted, perhaps at the end of this year.
All right, so we'll keep our eyes on that. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you.
The count for foreign duty-free visitors fell below 1 million for the first time here in Korea since the tourism industry was pummeled by the MERS outbreak back in July of 2015. According to Korea Customs Service, the number of foreigners visiting domestic duty-free shops in April fell nearly 20% from March to 998,000. After China's ban on group tours to Korea, numbers have fallen to just over half of the 1.9 million seen in August, and purchases made by foreign visitors were also about 11% lower than March at $590 million. With shop vacancies persisting at Incheon International Airport, Korea Customs Service is considering relaxing rules that restrict bids for multiple locations. But according to an official from the service, market conditions are so poor that without major players like Lotte and Shilla, it would be hard to fill those vacancies. It looks like support for Korea's small and mid-sized firms is set to increase by a significant amount this year, as President Moon Jae-in has vowed to pursue economic policies centered on SMEs. According to the Small and Medium Business Administration, both the central and local governments will work together to support a total of 1,347 smaller enterprises this year. The year's budget has also expanded by almost 1% to $14.8 billion from the same time last year. Out of 19 ministries, with the exception of the Education Ministry, all have allocated funds for SME-related projects. With billions of dollars being invested every year, there are growing calls to create a central body that can unify and integrate these support programs. With May being Family Month here in Korea, fun food festivals are also a great way to spend time with the family. And our Oh Jung-hee checked out a couple of them and takes us to the scene.
Those living in or visiting Seoul have a rare chance this week to experience the rich culinary heritage of Sri Lanka. The Sri Lanka Food Festival kicked off last Wednesday at the Millennium Seoul Hilton to celebrate 40 years of diplomatic relations of Korea and Sri Lanka. From desserts full of coconut to curries made from an amazing array of meat and spice, the festival is offering the best of the island nation's signature dishes.
Celebrating our 40 years of diplomatic ties between Korea and Sri Lanka, I take this opportunity to invite everybody in Korea to taste Sri Lankan food, because our food are very tasteful with so much of spices added, and on top with coconut milk taste.
Sri Lankan food is exquisite and above all complex, having developed over the course of centuries of interactions with neighboring and faraway nations. It incorporates flavors from the Portuguese, the Dutch, as well as Southeast Asian and Indian cuisines. But what shines the most are the country's representative ingredients, coconut and spice.
Always use coconut milk Sri Lanka. Which curry you make it, use the coconut milk. We make dessert also with coconut milk. 90-90, use coconut milk.
Meanwhile, Korea's biggest theme park, Everland in Yongin, Gyeonggi-do Province, last week saw a celebration of the season's freshest ingredients, a garden food festival called Spring on Spoon.
Here at Everland's Rose Garden, visitors can taste some of Korea's most representative food and drink from different regions across the nation. They're selling 25 dishes from each of the country's 8 provinces, from Gyeonggi-do to Jeju Island.
Here in Korea, it's become trendy to watch cooking shows and even broadcasts of people eating. Going along with that, we prepared Korean dishes using in-season ingredients, and we've also put our own twists on them. We hope a lot of people will stop by and have a taste.
The food event coincides with Everland's Rape Blossom Festival so that visitors can enjoy the warm late spring to the fullest. Visitors can choose to have a whole meal with barbecues of different kinds and Korean-style pancakes, or just take a short break with traditional and modern Korean desserts.
Yeah, it was great. Yeah, just getting stuck into it now. We came here for the water fountain, but it's closed. We're just walking by and we saw it, and we decided to have lunch here because it looks quite nice.
May is Family Month in Korea, and the many food festivals around the nation are a great way to get a new cultural experience while spending quality time with loved ones. Oh Jung-hee, Business Daily.
The number of newborns in Korea may be dropping by the year, but the market for kids' content has been growing at a rapid pace, adding more diversity as it goes. Our Lee Ju-young tells us more.
Young children are now being born into an environment where digital is a norm, where smart devices are omnipresent. So it's no surprise that their appetite for media content is nothing like that of their past generations. Statistics show roughly 70% of elementary students own a smartphone here in Korea. And along with this, the market for kids' content is getting bigger by the day and becoming increasingly diversified.
Children who grew up in a digital media environment are used to actively seeking out what they want to watch instead of passively being fed. I think using mobile devices to supply content is the best, considering the media environment and users' habits.
This kind of active content selection starts from a very young age here in the country. That's why Korea's major internet company Kakao acquired global mobile content provider Bluepin last year, leading to the birth of Kakao Kids. The interactive app acts as a platform that offers roughly 20,000 educational videos, including songs, stories, and language learning for children aged between 3 to 9.
The biggest reason we jumped into the educational content market for children is because we can go global. If we do a good job developing one type of media content, we can continue to use it in the future.
Over the past 7 years, the app has been downloaded over 30 million times from users around the world. It's compatible with all mobile devices and also has its very own tablet, the Kakao Kids tab. Apart from kids-only service providers, YouTube has also emerged as one of the largest platforms for kids' content in Korea. In fact, the video sharing company says the time users spend watching kid-friendly content jumped 8-fold as of September, compared to the same period 2 years ago. This is largely attributed to Jae-in Toys, one of YouTube's most popular channels for children. What sets this particular channel apart is that it's run by a production company called Carrysoft, which specializes in children's media content. The channel has nearly 1.5 million subscribers and about 1.5 billion views as of end of May. This is the channel's host, Carrie.
I think the hardest part is trying to be entertaining while actually teaching children something. I'm also very careful about how I use my language.
Carrysoft says when it first started out in 2014, monthly revenue was only about several $100s. But within a couple of years, that grew exponentially to reach about 4.6 million in 2016. It has also received millions of dollars in investments from large entertainment companies. This gave Carrysoft the launchpad to branch out to the musical scene as well as expand overseas. It currently ranks #1 on Chinese video hosting service Youku's kids content category. It's also preparing to branch out to other Asian countries like Vietnam and Japan.
Traditionally, media content for kids was made in the form of animations, and investments were made to broadcast that on TV networks. If the character becomes famous, then you would branch out to other businesses. But we broke out of that framework and started out on YouTube, and then introduced merchandise as well. We're now doing musicals and have expanded out to other areas little by little. I think other firms are starting to follow our lead.
Experts say the market is looking at a bright future ahead with endless possibilities as far as topics go.
Depending on how adults lay out the framework, these videos have the risk of becoming standardized if they're only looking at what would be profitable and things that attract ads and sell. The content would end up being very predictable. Instead, we're seeing a diverse range of videos that contribute to society and have educational value.
A channel that's free of script and format is MyLin TV, created by 12-year-old Jae-in. His journey as a one-person media creator took off after his father showed him his first YouTube video back in 2014.
At first, I was really embarrassed in front of the camera and didn't talk at all. It was a video about robots, so all I did was press a few buttons. But as I made more videos, I became more familiar with the camera and got more comfortable.
All he uses is an iPhone and a simple editing tool on his computer, but his channel has secured over 255,000 subscribers from Korea alone.
오늘은 이 코딩 로봇 DutyFree 가지고 놀아볼 거예요.
While he usually shoots, edits, and inserts thumbnails for every video by himself, he also gets a lot of help from his parents, who occasionally make an appearance in his videos.
I think our viewers like us because my son makes videos that his peers can truly relate to. A lot of them leave reviews like, I've tried that, I've been there too. I wanted to eat that, but my mom wouldn't let me. You can see that they share the same sentiment.
Experts say in order for content like this to add to society and provide children with better opportunities to learn and grow, adults should proactively engage with young users to rediscover their needs and propel the industry forward. Lee Ju-young, Business Daily.
And that wraps it up for today. Thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with more at the same time, same place for your Business Daily. Until then, goodbye.